So, Brad, welcome and thank you very much for joining us on this myths and reality. We really appreciate that. So, what we're going to do here is, as participants, put your messages in the chat box. We will pick that up between Brad and I. We've got some myths that we've collected over the years from many across the world. And so today we've got some that are already there to get us started of stories we've collected, and we'll share that. So let's get started. While we're getting started, Brad, do you want to just say a quick intro?
Yeah, I'll be real quick. Just first, really thank everyone for setting aside a little time today, this evening, or wherever you happen to be, to talk through some of these ideas and principles and concepts on proposals. We welcome your input, your comments, questions as we go. Most of you know a little bit about Shipley, so we won't dive into that, but we're just happy to be able to present this and hopefully spur some discussion and some dialogue here or within your companies, your organizations.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. So let's get going straight away in the first myth that we want to look at. Right. So, folks, just have a bit of fun. Anything you want to put in the text, please do so, and we will address that. So, first myth. What is a myth? It is really about a belief. People have had a belief. They believe it to be true. Many actually think it's absolutely written in stone. But is it always the case? So, let's look at facts and myths. So let's see a common myth that we have and discuss it and look at industry best practice. And we'll wrap up with further questions and discussion. We will close in 26 minutes. We won't be late because it's evening for all of you. So thank you very much again for joining us. So, Brad, the first myth here: you can't lose an opportunity in the proposal. What would you say?
Yeah, this is a good one I think to start with, because too many leaders, especially in a sales organization or a business development organization, or those non-affiliated with business development, often believe the proposal is nothing more than a necessary evil, an administrative task that we've got to do and check off the box to be able to win a contract. And so that myth, we have to, as proposal business development professionals, we have to dispel that myth, because we can lose an opportunity in the proposal if we're not careful. If we just go through the motions in our bids, our tenders, our proposals, and check the box, and we're not compelling and persuasive, all of that hard work we've done in selling, in positioning ourselves as the favored solution, it goes out the door and we lose it in the proposal. Or I'm guessing some of you can probably think of a time when a proposal got thrown out because it wasn't compliant. They forgot it. You forgot a table, they didn't answer a requirement, and it was just set aside and what didn't even get scored or evaluated. So yes, we can lose in the proposal. Our job is to make sure we don't, that we bring together all the good selling, the good capture work that we've done, and really put together the very best proposal possible. That would be my debunking of the myth, Sam.
Thank you. So the reality is, yes, of course, we can lose in if the proposal doesn't carry the story. So the next myth here that we've collected: evaluators read your entire proposal. So put everything in it.
Yeah, dump everything you know in your proposal, and they'll read it. Guarantee they'll read it. Sadly, after working dozens of years with various clients and industries, and talking to evaluators, customers who are scoring proposals, um, they are just like you and I. They're just like us. They're people, and they skim and scan things. And unless they really have to, they're not going to read your proposal from start to finish. They're going to look for answers to the questions that were in the bid request. And that's what they're going to look for so that they can score the proposal. So for us to write the proposal and create the proposal thinking they're going to start reading at the top and they're going to end at the bottom right, uh, is not correct. They're going to look, they want ease of evaluation. They want to be able to quickly find the answers. So, no, evaluators are not likely to read the entire proposal. They're going to look for answers. They're going to look for compelling content. But yes, some evaluators are. We're human. Some people are going to read it every little bit. The other thing, Sam, I'll point out, and I think most people know this, is sometimes different people in our customer organizations are assigned to different sections of the proposal to evaluate. So, Sam, I might ask you just to read the management section and score it. And I might read the past performance section and score it. And so we're not going to read the entire thing. So those are myths we need to make sure our teams understand.
Thank you, Brad. Very insightful. Appreciate that. So the next myth we have is standard boilerplate content is generally enough because the entire proposal isn't read anyway.
Yeah, you know, uh, just this is sadly, this is something we default to sometimes as proposal professionals, is we just default to what we already know or existing material, reuse content, boilerplate content to respond to a request or answer a question. It's not good enough. It's not good enough to take marketing fluff and marketing verbiage, things off of our website, and pop that into a proposal and not tailor it. So we have to have the discipline. We have to set aside enough time to tailor the content to the particular customer that we're bidding for and address their needs. So boilerplate content isn't enough. It just isn't. Um, it they will be scoring us, and all the content has to be tailored all the time.
Thanks, Brad. And I guess on a lighter note, make sure the previous customer's name is removed. How often do people make that mistake where the proposal has the wrong customer's name because it's been reused and somewhere they haven't removed that. So very
Yeah.
good. Bad idea. Each proposal should be tailored. Really nice point there about tailoring the proposal. The next myth, Brad, is on quick turnaround proposals, it's fine to skip the pink team and red team reviews, the quality reviews.
Yeah. Let me back up just quickly a little bit and make sure everyone on this webinar understands what we mean by pink team and red team. A pink team and a red team review, these are reviews by small groups of people usually that are reviewing the proposal at the different stages of development. So a pink team review on a bid or proposal is a review that we do very early in the proposal development process. We're looking at our strategy. Do we have the right win themes? Have we really taken a look at any weaknesses or strengths or gaps? It's an early pink team review to make sure we're strategically headed in the right direction with our bid. The red team review happens much later. It happens, maybe a few days, maybe a week before submittal, before we turn the proposal or the bid in to the customer. And it's a review of the near final draft. We're looking for everything: consistency, wording, placement on the page. So those are the two reviews we're talking about. Sometimes we're tempted to skip those reviews because we don't have time. We've only got 10 days to turn around a bid, 15 days, 2 weeks. So we got to hurry up. No, don't skip those reviews. Just shrink them up, shorten them, do them quicker. Maybe they're less formal, but we've got to make sure early on we're strategically headed in the right direction, and then develop the message, develop the proposal, and then before we submit, we've got to do a red team review. We can't submit, we can't cut corners here, even on quick turns. That
Thanks,
would
Brad.
be my comment on that myth.
Thank you. So the reality really is very simple. Don't do it. This reminds me of a story where a young guy stole somebody's bicycle, put it on his shoulder, and was running. And somebody else was chasing him. And a wise old man says, "Why don't you stop and get on the bicycle and you'll get away faster?" He said, "Sir, I don't have time to get on the bike." So I guess that's what happens is if we don't have time to stop and do the reviews, we're not going to get there faster.
Yeah.
So the next myth, the customer asked us to bid. So we're definitely in a favored position, right?
What do you think, Sam? What do you think on this one? I've asked you to bid. Come on, we need your bid. What do you
But
think?
could it be that I'm being asked to bid so that they can award it to the right person they want in the first place? They need a minimum of 3 bidders.
Yeah, yeah. A common fallacy, a common myth, a trap that we fall into is to think that we have such a great relationship with the customer. They've asked us to bid on this opportunity, and so we're in the lead. We're positioned to win it. Maybe. The reality is that might be true, but we can't make that kind of assumption. Like Sam said, maybe we're just filling up a scoring column for them. You know, they really want bidder A, and we're bidder B or C, but they need those 3 bids in order to make this a legitimate competition. So please, all of us, whether we're in sales, business development, proposal development, we can never assume we've got a bid wired and that it's coming our way and that we're in a favored position. Um, we can think that way, but we can't assume it and get lazy working the proposal.
Thanks, Brad. That's a great insight. And that kind of leads us to the next point. Winning business is hard, and many times incumbents get a sort of negative press. 3 years into a 5-year contract, or 4 years into a 5-year contract, 50 into a 5-year contract, and sort of some quarters of the customer thinks, they need to replace the incumbent. So, in terms of the incumbent, you know, the customer doesn't like the incumbent. So are we in a great position to win this?
Yeah. Who's the customer, right? So for one, my what scares me about this statement, Sam, is this one person on the customer facility or the customer location telling us they don't like the incumbent, or is it everybody's in consensus that they don't like the incumbent and they haven't done a good job? So I guess my number one reaction to this myth is, boy, check your sources. Are we sure the customer doesn't like the incumbent? And then what does doesn't like mean? Are they missing their timelines, their deadlines, their budgets? Don't they like their key personnel and their people? So there's just so much vague assumption in this myth to believe that just because someone might be a little bit unhappy somewhere with an incumbent contractor, that we are in the better position. We're in a great position. That is not going to be the case most of the time. We've got to ask more questions. We've got to drill down. We've got to dig deep and find out where this information is coming from and whether or not it's true. Because here's really what's going on with the customer and the incumbent. They're not only looking at solutions, they're looking at risk. What is the transition risk for me to choose a new supplier? And is it worth the risk to transition and try something new? So it's not just about the solution. It's not just about the relationships. It can also be about the risk factor. And I can speak for most of the markets in the US and many globally. Risk is becoming more and more important as an evaluation factor, not less.
That's great, Brad. Thank you. And we've got some good comments. Nancy has commented, it may also be too costly to change vendors, so the customer remains with the incumbent. They need to see the value of making the change. Great comment there. And also, Nanda, in the previous one, great comment you made. It's a bit like a recruiter looking at your CV or resume, or it might be free consultancy that the customer is seeking from the bidder, but they don't plan to give the bid anyway. So great comments. Keep it coming. So that takes us to the next one. There's a lot of things about exec summaries. Exec summaries, some say it's a summary of the solution, some say it's a decision maker's guide, and many think, the exec summary of the proposal isn't important because often it isn't scored. What do you think, Brad?
Okay. Yeah, I hope most of us in this session today, I hope you don't believe this myth that the executive summary uh, isn't important, because the reality it is, and it's perhaps the most important, one of the most important parts of a bid, of a proposal. It might not be scored. It might not be evaluated in the true sense of the literal sense of scoring. And a lot of customers, when they put out their bid request or solicitation documents, they might even tell you, that, hey, we would like a brief executive summary, but we're not going to include it in the evaluation. Well, think of how you would treat a really well done or poorly done executive summary if you were the evaluator. You may not score it because there's no place on the score sheet, to mark it off, but it's going to influence your decision. So it's not so much about scoring with the executive summary as it is influencing what that evaluator thinks and feels about your offer. Like Sam said, the executive summary it's not really just a summary of the proposal. It's not a reader's digest of the proposal. That's not the point. The executive summary is a sales document that should be persuasive around our value proposition. It's all about summarizing our offer and our value, not the technical details of our solution. So it is very important whether or not it's scored.
Thanks, Brad. Really appreciate that. As our colleague Tony Birch always says, the exec summary should be a decision maker's guide. And he did write one for a client, which had to be read out by a minister in the UK Parliament. And that was a piece of work done by Tony and his team, and the value of the exec summary. The other thing now we come on to is redundancy, in terms of, redundancy in a proposal is the enemy, too much content. What do you think there?
Yeah, it's interesting, and uh, by the way, Sam, I just real quick, I want to back up. These myths weren't made up by Shipley. We went out to practitioners, to proposal practitioners that work on bids and proposals every day, and we ask them, what are the common myths you run into out there when you're working with others in the organization, technical people, leadership teams, or what have you? That's where these myths came from. So someone submitted this myth that redundancy in a proposal is the enemy. Well, the key word here, redundancy, copy and paste, word for word placement of words, phrases, or sentences, or even paragraphs, cut and paste and placed in different sections of the proposal. Actually, that is the enemy. You don't want to do that. You don't want the reader, the evaluator, to see word for word the same response here that you saw there. But repetition is important. It is important that we repeat our win themes, our win strategies all throughout. So repetition is good. Redundancy actually is the enemy, but repetition is not.
Thank you, Brad. And Shifali, welcome to the webinar. Really nice to have you with us. And great comment Shifali has made on the exec summary. Emphasis should be on the executive and not on summary. Great point, Shifali.
Thanks, Sam.
And one of the things we often see, especially when we're English is not our first language, then we think there's a shortcut using big words, impressive words, long words and words, jargon such as follow the sun, world class, best in class, best of breed, and so on and so forth. So the next myth that we see coming in from our practitioners out there is that evaluators will be impressed with big words and technical language.
Yeah, just pretty straightforward here. We have to know our customer. We have to hopefully know who might be evaluating our proposal, our bid, and what level they're looking at. Are they executive level? We have to also understand there may be technical evaluators that are highly technical, looking at our technical solution. So the key here to this resolving this myth is just make sure we're writing the proposal to what I would call the lowest common denominator on the evaluation team. They are not going to be impressed with big technical words that they maybe don't understand. So I guess breaking this myth, or the reality is, try to use their language. Don't get any more technical in your response than they are in the solicitation itself. Stay at their level would be my recommendation.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brad. Yeah, Nanda, thanks for less is more. A picture on infographics is 1,000 words. Savio, you have your hand raised up. Do we have a question?
Yes, so this is from one of the attendees who had put out a mail asking more elaborate the response, the better it is. Is that true? Yes. The question is,
Brad, is the more elaborate the response, the better it is.
No, the simpler the response is usually is better. Simple is better.
Brilliant. Any other questions from the audience? We've got 4 minutes left to go for this webinar, and we have a question from Jyoti. Go ahead, Jyoti.
Hi, this is Jyoti Prakash from India. One of my, it's not a question, I just need a suggestion or a suggestion. I just, all these things are fine, but if we have a lot of examples, that will help us a lot in when we are writing the proposal. So any material or any books you would like to suggest where we can get a lot of examples? Like take an example of you may have a page of content. Now, how do we reduce it to a small infographic with a couple of bullet points with some examples? So any material is available on that.
Jyoti, that's great. Brad, do you want to answer that before I comment?
Um, just look all around you. Look at your marketing material. If you can get your hands on past proposals that you can look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of some of your past work. But yeah, that's a great point. If we have examples to build on, it's better. So you even just public websites. There's a company based in the U.S. If you're looking for examples of graphics and captions and different types of graphics and things, they've got some really good free content. 24-hour company is the name, and that might link you to some other sites. But they're kind of a proposal graphics oriented company, and they've got a ton of examples right there on their website of how to use graphics and different types of visuals. So just search the web, look at your own internal documents, and see what works. Sam?
Thanks, Brad.
I will
And
look
of
into
course,
that 24-hour company.
yeah. And what you could also do is look at the UK Audit Office. And we'd also recommend, if you don't have it, get yourself a copy of the Shipley Proposal Guide. At the back, there is a lot of model documents. If you haven't got a guide, Jyoti, just if you leave us your details or connect with Savio, we'll get one across to you.
Sure, I have a copy.
So, time's gone quick. Any other last question before we wrap up? Brad, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Often presentations have to be made. This is not part of our myth list today, but just in closing, are there any tips you could give to folks on? Okay, there is a question here. Relationship trumps your story. Thoughts, please. And I take it you're not referring to the former president.
Relationships are so important. That goes back to that very first myth is that we can't lose a deal in the proposal. We can if we mess up in the proposal, the bid, all of that relationship work that we've done can go out the door because we lose our credibility. But yes, relationships, trust, some of those soft interpersonal skills are so important. Does it completely trump the proposal? No. They have to align. The relationship, the trust, the interpersonal that you've built, the proposal has to align with that. If it's off course or inconsistent, that is a red flag to the customer.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate that. Just a quick one on presentations. Just a quick 30-second tip on presentations.
Yeah, I like to think of sales briefings and presentations. Sometimes they are being done now instead of a written proposal, which is fine. But there's two sides of the presentation, the briefing we've got to constantly be thinking about. One is the development, and we've got to be thinking of the development of a briefing just like development of a proposal. What's the win strategy? What matters to the customer? What are the benefits? What are our discriminators? They don't want us to come in and just brief on a bunch of features. We've got to link those features to the benefits to them, period. So as we develop the briefing, we've got to stop thinking about all of our neat features and start thinking about how those features solve a problem for that customer. And that has to be right front and center in the briefing. The part two of the briefing tip would be the delivery. Boy, we've got to be on point. We've got to be sharp. If we're doing it over the web and over Teams or over Zoom or whatever, we've got to make sure we're crisp, we're concise, we're not fumbling with the technology. If we're in person, We've got to make sure we're connecting with the group, we're interactive, we're engaging, and so focus on both. Developing that briefing, staying aligned with the benefits and discriminators, and then make sure our delivery is just super on point. We're clear, we're concise, we're confident, and the technology's working.
Thanks, Brad. And just to add to that is rehearse, 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 and know who the master of ceremonies is. Don't answer a question if you're not asked to answer by the master of ceremonies. We have one last question on which I'll give a quick comment. How many case studies should be submitted in a proposal defense? Well, Manish, we say you need to give proof. And what we suggest is rather than give case studies, give success stories. You may want to have a matrix that gives several and then bring out the exact number, maybe 2 or 3, but don't overwhelm the audience by just giving them a long list that is difficult for them to read. If you want any further tips on that, reach out to us and we'll give you some guidance on how to use the Shipley 4-box method to create your success story. Well, to the audience, a real big appreciation that you've taken time out at 7 p.m. India time. Brad, we know it's early your time. Thank you for coming into the office early. We really appreciate that. And Savio for setting it all up. Brad, thank you very much.
Thank you.